You all know that every major publication, every brochure, everything that you read most likely starts with the sentence, half of the human population is living in cities today, and in 2050 it's predicted that 75% of people live in cities. Dot. So we have to care about cities and forget about the rest. This presentation and the following presentations are arguing that's a terrible mistake and that we might be in for a surprise. In a medieval village you had 50 to 100 professions. In a contemporary village you have, agricultural village, you have basically one profession, that is farmer. And so we are talking about this general concept, a small human settlement with a society. Embedded in landscape rather than cityscape, that's definitely one thing that most villages have in common. At least some aspects of self-supporting local economies and active participation of inhabitants in their local life support systems, which means that there is a totally different sociology in villages than in cities. I was invited to speak at the Brussels Broadband Conference, and I was invited by DG Competition in 2007. I said, why does DG Competition invite a person that is known a little bit for being an absolute advocate of cooperative economies? And they said, because you cannot compare cities and rural areas. Rural areas are doomed to die out if we apply the rules of competition. So that's very interesting that even in Brussels, people begin to learn. So the village is a place with high local interaction, governance and culture, where people take responsibility of their own life. Okay, one look back at the city. They cannot take care of their own life without having the city on the horizon. We agreed to that. So we are living in a global urban reality, and in fact many of the contemporary standards of life are only possible when the city persists and supports villages. We are not talking about going back to an age where everything was created out of a local economy. But we need to see that there is a more general principle that helps cities deal with this relation to villages, and that's what I call the poppy seed principle, so that cities are understanding themselves also as agglomerations of villages. And if they understand themselves in this fractal way, they probably can deal much easier with the issues of communities elsewhere. So we also want to emphasize that urban and rural village building are related agenda. And again, of course, the spatial pattern is not sprawl, but selective spread. Now, this is maybe a dream. And in fact, when I looked at this picture, I had mixed feelings. That was in Stern magazine. And it showed a young boy milking a plastic cow, and that's one of the things you can see at the expo in Shanghai. So is it a bridge, or is it a spectacle? Is it a romantic dream? What's the relation between cities and urban areas? Actually, if you look out of Vienna, you might find a region which is northwest of Vienna, where 44 villages teamed up and founded an internet platform, wohnen-im-Waldviertel.at, which means dwelling in wood quarter. And it's probably, as far as I know, the first large area joint action where communities team up to win urban dwellers back. And we're involved in one of those places where they have a fantastic fiber optic infrastructure in St. Martin in Leinsitztal. And we're talking about creating a media cluster there. Another example from Austria is the Sauwood. It's a region in Upper Austria, and they decided to build a treetop village. And what happened was amazing. They attracted, without even predicting that, 200,000 visitors a year, and they turned the leader office into a tourist office. So see how deep the quest for the village is in the hearts of people. Now, we all might know it somehow, to jump from the psychological to the functional, that rural areas are indispensable. But we have never seen an account of the totality of functions that rural areas fulfill in our life. I don't go to the details, but I want you to keep this slide also in the background, because rural areas are indispensable. And the thesis here is that rural areas will only persist if we stop the detrimental trend of urbanization, because if we have 75% population in rural areas in 2050, it will accelerate the trend, which means if it's empty, it loses quality and it gets even emptier faster. So today is the moment to react and to counter that trend, at least in our imagination. If we don't do that, we will have not nature as we knew it, because nature, truly livable nature, cannot be recreated without humans, and if humans are needed, it's also very difficult to recreate a destroyed nature. So on one side, we have the potential to narrow down our economic, physical sphere, but on the other side, we have the potential to expand our mental, our intellectual sphere. So if villages of the world team up and work together, create virtual universities, virtual research centers around each and every question of local living, they have an incredible potential. We're working, by the way, on a virtual university of the village based on broadband video, so local educational institutions can share lectures and seminars. Next unforeseen potential is the rise of green chemistry, what's called cradle to cradle. That means that with the progress of chemical science, it's possible now to use raw materials that are of plant origin, of biogenic origin, to do much more than just textiles. They can be also used to create, for example, the body of a car, or they can be created to create the body of a computer, packing material, cosmetics, and thousands of things. This green chemistry is part of a very revolutionary material production concept, which builds on cycles rather than on waste. So cradle to cradle, in difference to cradle to grave, means nothing, but really nothing that we produce must be waste. Everything should be food, should feed another process. It's part of that renewable resources, plants, the stewardship of all these environments get a totally new importance. And the next and last slide that I want to show you is that villages are actually an environment that can manifest the cultural wealth that we have accumulated in this global age, which means we have now formed thousands or millions of cultural communities. We are getting in a state of resonance with other people by the internet. We discover that we have common values. We discover that we can work together well. And out of that comes the desire to move physically together. So this means that we have really the opportunity to build a world where our human habitat expresses our values. And this is a very, I think, a very strong hidden point why the village dream might be still alive.